That was Eric Holder speaking today to the state's attorney generals on state same-sex marriage bans. Now, he made headlines by telling them that in those rare cases that you heard him mention, they may not have to defend laws that they feel are discriminatory. Holder's remarks come amid a growing progressive movement in the South fighting for equality on multiple fronts, from racial justice to gay rights to voting protections. It's been called the Moral Monday movement, and some 80,000 people attended a single protest a few weeks ago in North Carolina, and the energy, many say, is spreading to states like Florida, Arizona, and Alabama, and to different days of the week as well. Now, here to explain this rising tide of civil disobedience and organizing and the potential policy impacts is Berman, a contributing writer to The Nation magazine, who recently wrote about the next steps for the Moral Mondays movement, and he is the author of Herding Donkeys. Ari, thanks for being here.
Hey, Melbourne. Good to see you. Good to see you, Berman. Nice of you as well.
Now, you write in this article about not only what Moral Mondays are doing in North Carolina, but, as I mentioned, the impacts around the country. And you compare it to the civil rights organizing model, but in that period in the 60s, there was a lot more of an appeal for the courts to help and to ratify civil rights. What we're seeing here, particularly in the Shelby decision on voting rights, as well as other cases, is an appeal to courts necessarily not there, right? And so you have an attorney general who we showed who may be more sympathetic, but not that backstop in the third branch.
Well, the Moral Monday movement, particularly in North Carolina, they're really trying to appeal to the street, and they're getting out in the street, and they're trying to sway public opinion because they already had these rights. Remember, in North Carolina, they had voting rights, strong women's rights, strong workers' rights protections, and those are being taken away by the Republican government that came in 2010, and then the Republican takeover of 2012 when Republicans took the governor's mansion and the legislature. So the Moral Monday movement is really, they're not fighting for a new era so much as they're fighting to get back some of the things they had, and then trying to build a 21st century version of the civil rights movement that is actually more diverse and encompasses more issues than the civil rights movement of the 1960s, from which it draws inspiration.
Well, and as Ari Melber mentioned, 80,000 protesters just recently, so it has caught fire. It has been really effective. There's tons of energy around it. What do you see as sort of the magic ingredients that have made this particular protest movement take off?
Well, they've been really relentless. In 2013, when they first went down to the legislature, in April, there was I think 17 people that got arrested. And then they came back again, and there was something like 30 people. And then it just kept growing and growing and growing. The legislature kept passing these crazy laws. They would kick 170,000 people off unemployment benefits. They would pass an abortion ban attached to a Sharia law bill. They would pass the worst voter suppression bill in the country. So it was really the laws themselves that then gave power to the movement, and then the movement was just well placed to do something about it. They had such a broad coalition. They were able to pivot from issue to issue. So one week it was voting rights, the other way it was women's rights, then gay rights. So everyone felt like they had a seat at the table, and the fact that everyone was fighting for everyone else's issue in the coalition gave it some real depth, that it couldn't just be a fad. And then after 2013, after all these protests, when they left Raleigh, when the legislature went out of session, they went all across the state. And then in 2014, they kicked it off with this massive moral march. I think the point of the march was to say, we can mobilize all these people. We're not going anywhere. We're going to grow in North Carolina, and we're going to take it, just like the civil rights movement did, all across the South.
I think the key magic ingredient for the Moral Mondays movement has been Reverend William Barber, the president of the North Carolina NAACP, an extraordinary man I've met and talked to a few times, telegenic, charismatic. Show him a little bit of the Reverend Barber.
We call on all people of goodwill, blacks, whites, Native Americans, Asians, Latinos, Democrats, Republicans, rich, poor, young, and old, to resist attacks on the poor working families of North Carolina. We are calling on all people to get on board. Get on board. There's a train coming, and it's headed toward justice.
I'm suspicious of the great man theory, but he is a big reason why this has happened. And without someone like him, or without him being able to be in multiple places at once, it's going to be hard to spread this movement.
Well, absolutely. You need a Reverend Barber. You need someone like that. But what Reverend Barber has done is he's also empowered a whole new generation of leaders. They're training new activists, new organizers. They're training a lot of powerful young people down there as well. So that's how it's going to spread. There doesn't necessarily need to be a Reverend Barber on day one in these places, but there has to be a commitment to training the next generation of leadership. And I think that's what he's trying to do, not just in North Carolina, but across the South.
Great reporting. Ari Berman, excellent stuff. Thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Good to see you.
All right, we turn